Hello and welcome to Harry Cole Saves the West, the show where American grit meets British backbone. Another day and another rejection by the Russians of Donald Trump's plan to end the war in Ukraine. Putin's swagger is slipping, however. His army is bleeding out. His economy is running on fumes. And yet still, America hesitates. Sanctions may sting, but they don't strike. Weapons may sustain, but they're not going to win this war. Sending Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine could certainly send a message right to the doorsteps of Moscow, quite literally, but that call is yet to be answered. After reports of another heated row on Friday with President Zelensky at the White House and another potential meeting with Putin on the cards, what is President Trump up to? And tonight we're forced to ask the question again, is America about to abandon Ukraine? Joining me tonight is someone who's never been shy about calling out weakness where he sees it, former Congressman and retired Army Colonel Alan West. And in the studio throughout tonight's show, Republican strategist Sarah Sellep. Alan West, you sir, Colonel, what's going on with Donald Trump? He seems to be blowing hot and cold on Ukraine. First he's threatening to send Tomahawk missiles, and now he's telling President Zelensky to swallow vast tracts of stolen land by the Russians. What's going on?
Well, it's good to be with you, Harry. Thanks for having me on from this side of the big pond. I think that what you look at is that, President Trump, he likes to refer back to the book that he wrote called The Art of the Deal. But I think there are times when you have to go back and read Sun Tzu's seminal work called The Art of War. And when you're dealing with despots and when you're dealing with dictators, autocrats, there are just two things that they understand, strength and might. And when I look at what is going on right now between Russia and Ukraine, it was George Santayana, the Spanish political philosopher, that said, those who fail to learn from history are doomed to repeat it. I see exactly what happened back in the late 1930s between the West and a person by the name of Adolf Hitler. When you continue to provide concessions, when you continue to, allow someone to have more land and you don't stand up against them. Of course, we remember Neville Chamberlain waving the piece of paper, the 1938 Munich Accords. Within a year, Hitler had already gone and overtaken Czechoslovakia. He said it was just a piece of paper. So I think that there comes a time when you cannot have this very careful, fence walking type of policy, foreign policy, when you're dealing with a person like Putin. You can sit down and meet with him. You can have F-35s flying over his head, but there's only one thing that he understands.
And that presumably is brute force and having the windows of the Kremlin rattled with long-range American missiles, presumably.
Well, I hate to put it that way, but when you look at the fact that you are launching from Russian territory into Ukraine, and then also we see the incursions into Poland, we see some of the disturbing things that are happening in the Baltic states, Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia. We know that there are some concerns that even Finland has with some of the incursions that Russia is going about, cutting some of the pipelines, communications pipelines, oil and gas pipelines there in the Baltic Sea. So there has to be a message that is sent. And it's not just a message of the United States of America by itself. Of course, the United States of America needs to be a key and integral part. But again, it has to be the West. It has to be those European countries that want to stand up to this expansionist dictator who said that his greatest disappointment of the 20th century was the collapse of the Soviet Union.
Having said all that, Colonel, then what is Donald Trump doing? Because it seems he's sort of blowing in two directions to me. Obviously, we saw the Alaska meeting back in August. That obviously, was a attempt to sort of unlock the deadlock, but doesn't seem yet to have worked. We then saw President Trump hold an extraordinary summit at the White House with the European leaders who all pledged to, police whatever peace deal could be achieved. And then again, Putin has thumbed his nose at the West and said no dice, and said, the fundamental underlying factors of the war need to be ironed out before any peace deal. There's no ceasefire with peace. And Trump has a long conversation with Putin last week, and now seems to be back sort of almost trumpeting Putin's lines rather than Zelensky's lines. Is it the case of him just sort of listening to the last person he's spoken to, or are you concerned he's not listening to people like you who are trying to help him?
Well, I don't know if the president's going to listen to someone like myself, but I think he's trying to thread a very careful needle, in that, again, he is trying to come to a solution whereby he is not upsetting certain people in his own party's base who does not want to see any quote unquote expansion of a war, because after these several years, we've seen a lot of American resources that have gone into Ukraine. But I don't think that we're talking about financial resources. I think that we're talking about showing a seriousness about the weapons and armaments that will enable this not to happen. And if you go back and you look at the comparison between Barack Obama and Joe Biden, that's when Vladimir Putin made his incursions into Ukraine, the Crimea, of course, and then also the eastern Ukrainian area, especially the Donbass region. But I don't think that you want to reward a person like Putin saying that we're just going to draw the lines where they are, because what guarantee that you have that Putin will not continue on? So I think there comes a point of no return when you have to realize that, peace and talk and negotiation and compromise are seen as weakness by someone like a Vladimir Putin.
So if you were advising the president right now, if you had 30 minutes with him in the Oval Office tonight, what would you say to him? Is this the moment to go for the kill?
Yeah, I think that the most important thing is you have to show Vladimir Putin that you're very serious about him not having supporting this invasion that he had against a sovereign nation state. I think it's very important that we up the ante as far as providing more of our liquefied natural gas to countries in Western Europe so that they can cut the ties with the Soviet Union. I think we also have to put economic pressure on China, because there's a reason why North Koreans are there fighting in Ukraine, and that's because of the blessing of China. But also, again, I think you have to show that you're going to support the type of weaponry. If the Western European countries, NATO purchases these weapons and turn it over to Ukraine, that's fine. But we need to have an air cap that is up there preventing these drones and these aerial incursions into some of these other sovereign nations. That's what he has to see.
Colonel, stay there. I'm going to come back to you, and I'm going to pick you up on that China point in a moment. First, I'm going to bring in Sarah Salop, Republican strategist. Good evening, Sarah. It does strike me, am I wrong in thinking it strikes me that the relationship that Trump has with Putin is clearly much better than the relationship he has with Zelensky. It doesn't strike me he particularly likes Zelensky, and it strikes me that he's just not willing to just go that extra mile to really kick Putin when he's down.
That's a really good way to put it. So how I see it, over the past 6 years, when we've been seeing Zelensky, if you look at social media, you still see him as unserious. It goes to the sweatshirts, it's the pomp and circumstance, the lack of respect in that sense that he has for Trump, showing up in the sweatsuits or whatever he does.
Well, he wore a suit. He wore a suit on Friday, just about.
He tried his best. But I guess it does come down to respect for Trump. He understands that. He's been working with dignitaries since he was a kid, basically, and he understands that. He does have a better relationship with Putin because Zelensky isn't there yet. He's expecting everyone to give him what he wants.
I mean, to be fair to the guy, he is the one that's been invaded. He is the one who, could easily have fled, instead stayed and fight. Putin is the unelected tyrant. He is the attacker. He is a dictator. He is an fundamentally evil guy. Is it not slightly worrying that the leader of the free world seems more comfortable discussing carving up the map, essentially, with the Kremlin than he does with the people who've been attacked?
I think that Zelensky is the one who's not receptive to what Trump is saying. Because if you circle back to the past 6 months, the past year, when Trump has had these conversations, his rhetoric on all of the Ukrainian, Putin thing, it's just wild, because we have been, as Republicans, giving Ukraine more and more and more and more, and yet Zelensky isn't giving them the respect. Putin obviously is going to do whatever he wants. He's unelected. He will take and take and take. But Zelensky expects the U.S. government to give him a blank check for whatever he thinks he needs, and that is not the case with Trump in charge.
Colonel West, does it make you feel slightly uncomfortable when you see the sort of relationship that Trump has with Putin being a little bit more, not sympathetic's the wrong word, but certainly emollient to each other, whereas, Zelensky gets the tongue lashings?
Well, I will agree with the young lady there with you in that there's a little issue about deference. Without a doubt, the president likes to have that level of respect. But I think also, as you just pointed out, you have to see an evil dictator for who they are. and you have to be able to stand against them and say that, there's a point of no return and there's a line that we're not going to allow you to continue to cross. We saw that when we went after the Iranian nuclear facilities. I don't know if this quote unquote ceasefire is going to hold up with Hamas in Gaza because they haven't changed their charter. And we see they have already killed 2 Israeli soldiers just recently. So I think there comes a point in time when, as I stated, dictators understand strength and might. We failed to show that during the late 1930s, and we saw what happened with Adolf Hitler and World War II. And this threat of us going into World War III with Vladimir Putin, if we just stand up to him, I think that's an empty threat. I think that's, a deceptive rhetoric because I believe that we can make Putin back down and we can get the Russian people to make Putin back down.
Do you think Donald Trump is you do think Donald Trump does have the stomach to get this over the line then?
Well, I think what Donald Trump may be trying to do, the president may be trying to do, is coax Putin to come to a table. But we have already tried that. We've gone down that path. And
Putin's laughing at it. Putin's laughing at us.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He's thumbing the nose. I mean, after the Alaska summit, we saw him increase attacks. So I believe that there's only a couple of things he understands, the strength and might, and not sitting down and trying to compromise, appease, or acquiesce to him at some table. He invaded a sovereign nation state, and I think that it's about time. We've seen this, wash, repeat over and over again, with Georgia and some of the other countries there in Eastern Europe. It has to stop. It has to end.
Sarah, Colonel West is completely correct there. We must stand up to tyrants. We must show a message. But it doesn't seem the one person that seems unwilling to do that at the moment is the president.
We're just caught in the middle of too many arguments right now. I mean, Trump is the deal maker in chief, right? We know that he is the guy to get things done. He can help build relationships, but are we putting American interests first by taking out all of the resources that we have, all of the money? I mean, we're in the middle of a 19-day government shutdown or 20-day, whatever it is at this point. And yet we're still talking about Ukraine and the Middle East and all of those situations that have nothing to do with us, except if they join the UN, if there is any way that we are brought in, it's because we're forced to. Trump is the one who can handle it, but at this point, we need to focus on our national interests as well.
Do you think he's bitten off more than he can chew in terms of Ukraine? He promised he could end it in a week. He promised he ended it within his first term. All sorts of promises, and here we are. 11 months later, it's still looking pretty deadlocked. Has he met his match yet?
I just want to blame Biden and the administration for that. This situation should have been taken care of years ago, right when it started, right? Nip it in the bud. But in that way, Republicans didn't really have a hand. We do now. Trump is the guy to get things done. The world is looking at him.
Trump's saying give up land. Give up land now. Reward the invader. As Colonel West says, it's chilling echoes of 1936 and 37 and the appeasement of Hitler. But basically, might is right. Strong men get their own way. And you'd happily see a deal that would see the invaded Ukraine have to surrender sovereign territory.
Right.
Yeah, you would.
I think we're just exhausted. The past few years, all we've been able to say, when I was prepping for this, I just kept thinking, what is there to say now except for the clips of, is Zelensky going to get kicked out of the White House? Are people going to call Trump Putin's puppet again? It is the same exact rhetoric, but we did give them billions and billions and billions of dollars over the past 6 years. And that puts our hands behind our backs and tie them. We just have to get to the finish line. Everybody's exhausted, and we, as a country, gave them too much when Democrats were in charge.
Alan West, what do you make of that?
Well, I agree with her wholeheartedly. I mean, this is not about writing a blank check to the Ukrainians so that they can use it for unemployment and benefits thereof. I think that what we saw back in the...
Well, they're using it on missiles and bullets mostly, right?
Yeah, but there's a little bit of accountability issue that we see. I mean, it's not the same as what we saw with the United States of America prior to entering into World War II and the support that we were giving to England, as a matter of fact, during the Battle of Britain. So again, when you have an agreement where the NATO nations, the Western European nations say, hey, look, we'll buy this weaponry and we will get it to Ukraine. I think that that's a great path. We don't end up losing any money for that. We are paid for that support. But without a doubt, I think that President Trump has to understand that there is no sitting down and discussing things with Vladimir Putin because he has clearly shown that that's not what he wants. And I'm not trying to be, the thing that everyone will come out and say, Alan West is a neocon. No, I mean, I've been on battlefields and I've seen soldiers lose their lives. I don't want to see that. But what I do understand is that sometimes the only way you deal with a bully is to smack him in his mouth. And that's exactly the situation that we have right now.
But is it really smacking him in the mouth, Colonel, if he's going to be rewarded with what vast swathes of the Donbass region?
No, it's not.
But that's the Trump deal on the table. Trump's saying to Zelensky, accept the battle lines. It's a negotiation about where the line is, not about returning to pre-February 2022 borders or even 2014 borders taking in Crimea. Crimea is already gone essentially in the eyes of Donald Trump. But he's saying you might be able to get a little bit of land back, but you're not getting it all. That's rewarding the invader, isn't it?
Yeah, you are rewarding the invader. And the only thing I can see by way of caveating that is that if you are given the Donbass region and you have already gone in and taken Crimea, we're going to make sure that we honor the agreement, I believe from 1993 or 1996, when Ukraine decided, we signed an agreement with them that if they surrendered their nuclear weapons, we will provide them protection. Then we need to talk about a security protection force, a NATO security protection force that will be on the ground in Ukraine to make sure that no further incursions continue on. So you have to, once again, try to put Vladimir Putin in an untenable position. The only way you get to keep this region is that we will put people on the ground to ensure that you don't extend any further, or you just get out and you don't get that region, period. So I think that has to be the tough thing. You cannot just wantonly, unconditionally surrender the territory of a sovereign nation, because that's exactly what happened with the Sudetenland. That's exactly what happened with Czechoslovakia in the late 1930s.
Colonel West, the people that are going to be really paying this a close attention are probably sitting in Taiwan right now looking a little bit nervous. China is watching, as you made the point earlier. If Donald Trump does cede territory to Vladimir Putin in terms of a Ukraine peace deal, which I think we kind of all accept is where this is heading if a deal ever gets over the line. What message does that send to the communists in China and what they can do with Taiwan? And the fact is that essentially, while the world may make a massive stink for 3 months, the West, 3 years, sorry, the West will kick off, they'll arm, they'll shout, and then in the end, they'll fold. This is basically a green light for the Chinese to seize Taiwan, isn't it?
Yeah, weakness is enticing. And, if you go back to what happened during the Biden administration, when we had that horrible, disengagement from Afghanistan, a place where I spent 2.5 years of my life, that gave a green light to China. That gave a green light to Iran. That gave a green light to Russia. And so if they continue to see, a lot of talk, or as we say down here in Texas, all hat but no cattle, that's just going to encourage them to continue on. And I would be very nervous if I am Taiwan, because we already see what China is doing in the South China Sea, attacking Philippine ships in the Scarborough Shoals. So they're very aggressive in what they're doing. So there are many different ways. It doesn't always have to be a military solution. It can be an economic solution. It can be a diplomatic solution where we bring by more nations to stand against these two belligerent countries, which are forming a 21st century axis of evil.
Would you like to see America arming the Taiwanese, though, in a way that in the run up to the invasion of Ukraine, and always really from 2014 and before, more could have been done as a deterrent in Ukraine, training, arms, militia. Would you like to see that sort of America playing that sort of role in Taiwan?
I would like to see the United States of America get serious about having a credible military deterrent force. I'll give you a great example. It's going to hurt my heart to say this, Harry, but the means by which you extend a nation's hegemonic power is not through a great army. I mean, if that were the case, the Spartans would have ruled the ancient world, but it was the Athenians, because the Athenians had the strong navy. We see China building up their maritime force, and what has happened with our maritime force. During the Reagan administration, we had over 500 surface naval warships. Now today, we have less than 250 surface warships. And so we've gone in the wrong direction as far as our maritime strength. So I'd like to see us really build up our credible deterrent military force, especially in the Pacific. And that sends a message to China.
Colonel West, thank you for joining us this evening on Harry Cole Save the West. Sarah Sellett, what do you reckon the odds are of President Trump, arming the Taiwanese next? And if he does give up that land, as you say, in 30 seconds, isn't that just a green light to the Chinese?
I have no idea. Let's ask the Lieutenant Colonel again.
Well, it just strikes me as there is no win situation here.
Right.
You cede land to Ukraine, to the Russians. Sarah, stay there. We'll be back with No Kings. You're not going to want to miss this one. Welcome back to Harry Cole Saves the West. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube. You will find all sorts of exclusive content and extras goodies there. Harry Cole Saves the West, unsurprisingly. Now, they promised the largest single day of protest in modern US history. The No Kings movement claims that millions of Americans were on the streets this weekend. But I have to say, I think it turned out to be a bit of a flop. Have a look at what these whack jobs are up to. There they are, the ice lice. Grown men and women rolling around on the floor, pretending to be lice or ice agents. I mean, at least the Democrats had fun.
Democracy looks like.
This is what democracy looks like.
This is what democracy looks like.
No, the government shut down, meaning those two guys got a nice day out. What democracy looks like? I think democracy looked like them losing the House, losing the Senate and losing the popular vote last November. But yeah, at least they got to dress up. Now, Donald Trump has hit back today, saying he worked his ass off to make this country great. But his critics continue to call him a tyrant. Now, to discuss all this, we're joined live by Senator Joni Ernst from the great state of Iowa. Senator, good evening and thank you for joining us. Is Donald Trump a king?
No, he is a duly elected president of the United States. And I will use President Trump's own words. Congratulations, No Kings, you did it. Today there is no king on the throne here in the United States. We still have a president. So thank you for doing your job. For those of us that truly do celebrate what is a No Kings Day, that is July 4th. So we are so blessed to be in this nation where we have democratic elections. And I am so grateful we have been able to demonstrate to the Democrats that President Trump not only won the electoral vote, but he won the popular vote in a landslide. And that's what we need to keep reminding all these crazy liberals on the far left. They lost. Deal with it.
When you see people like Adam Schiff, your colleague there, screaming that this is what democracy looks like and joining along with these sort of boomer protests from what looked like a majority of much older voters, I mean, it does feel like they sort of slightly missed last November and are still fighting the battles of 2016 to 2020 again. You guys just must sort of rub your hands with glee and think, these are our campaign ads for the midterms writing themselves, right?
Yes, absolutely. And if you look out across all of those protesters, you do see an aging demographic. You see people that are just unorganized with their thoughts because there are so many different groups there. There's no one common theme to any of it. And yes, they did lose sight of what happened last November when the overwhelming majority of the American people said, we're tired of the purple-haired crazies. We need to get back to common sense in the United States of America. Therefore, we are going to elect Republicans in the House, in the Senate, and most certainly into the White House. So we have a United States that's finally headed in the right direction after 4 years under Sleepy Joe and misguided Democrats serving in Congress. So, it is America. This is democracy. It is where we allow protests to happen. Most certainly, if we were under a king, kings would not allow for protests against.
Well, I think the king of England doesn't mind the odd protest in the street. We have our fair share of crazies back in London. They kind of have a point with Donald Trump, though, don't they? He isn't exactly your normal president. He was leaning heavily into the king thing this weekend with all sorts of AI videos of him, sort of well, I won't put it too polite. Well, I'm trying to put it politely, but smearing his opponents, shall we say, and wearing a crown. He is pursuing his political opponents in a very aggressive fashion. He does do a lot of things by presidential decree, the executive order, rather than, you know, legislating for things through Congress. They've kind of got a point about him. He's a very presidential president, right?
Say that he is an aggressive president, moving us back in the right direction. Executive orders are used by every president. And what we see is that the president is actually getting us back to the way things should be. I mean, if you look at our Department of Defense or Department of War, we are actually focusing on becoming, once again, the most lethal fighting force on the face of the planet. It's something I've preached for a very long time. I mean, we are getting back to securing our borders, making sure that illegal migrants are not flowing all from around the world and penetrating into the United States from our southern border. We are going after those that are trafficking fentanyl into the United States of America. So, yes, is he being aggressive? Absolutely. Who does he have in mind when he is focusing on these things? The American people. He's putting our communities and our safety first, which is something we have not seen in a very long time.
Hand on heart, Senator, are you entirely comfortable with everything that Donald Trump's doing? You cite there the fentanyl across the, into the southern border of America, but those strikes on those boats are highly controversial and legally pretty dubious. Are you comfortable with that level of executive power at the king-like power to essentially, blast submarines and boats out of the water with very little evidence published of who these people actually are?
Well, there is very little evidence published, but yes, I have actually sat through a classified briefing on those strikes down in our skiff here at the Capitol, which was available to Republicans and Democrats. We actually held a hearing in that enclosed room, and we're able to ask a number of questions of the leadership that are engaged in targeting those boats. And I believe that they are legally sound. And I actually am glad that we have a president that's actually doing something about these narco terrorists. So I do believe there is a strong legal basis behind these strikes. I think the president is doing the right thing. We do have a lot of intelligence that points at the fact that these are narco terrorists. I mean, we have exquisite intelligence that tells us so. So I do have confidence in the president and what he is doing to protect Americans. There are not many people in the United States of America that hasn't known a family or has been directly connected to someone that has lost their life as they struggle with addiction here in the United States of America. So I'm okay with it. I'll be honest, I'm okay with it.
What about going further? The president's hinted that he'd like to perhaps, be striking drug smugglers and narco-terrorists, as you call them, on the ground. America doesn't have the best success, I have to say, and forgive me, with the greatest of respect, doesn't have the best respect at intervening in South America over the years. Would you be happy to see strikes on land, or possibly even the concept of boots on the ground?
Well, I can't say that I would be happy about that. No, I can't go that far. But what I can say is that the president is throwing down a warning marker. And by doing that, I think he's trying to engage some of the foreign leaders in actually policing up their own states and getting serious about these terrorists that are running rampant through their countries. So I think what we need to do is continue to develop those mill-to-mill relationships, making sure that we are working with the leaders in these other countries. But again, it's incredibly important that the president is actually throwing down the marker and saying, you know what, America comes first. Leaders in other countries, you need to start policing your own bad behaviors within your own countries. If it is affecting the United States of America, we will find a way forward. Now, I believe in utilizing soft power much more in these situations, so whether it is the trade wars that we have out there, other means, cutting off aid to those countries, those are the things that need to be discussed first. But then beyond that, it's up to the president working with Congress and the Department of War on how we handle those other situations. But believe me, this is a president who is not asleep at the wheel like we saw President Joe Biden. So if he's engaging leadership in these other countries, I'm really grateful for it.
On that exact point, you led me nicely to my next question, which is about the soft power and trade diplomacy of Donald Trump. In China, the president was saying that trade talks are on track. He said we're going to have a great deal with China, but it has to be a fair deal with China. How do your voters and constituents and yourself, how do you see a fair deal with China looking for the American people?
Well, a fair deal with China, and I will speak from an agricultural community. I was raised on a farm. My family farms soybean and corn, so operations. And what we have seen China do through so many decades is push back upon the American farmer. So while Iowa does a lot of trade, or we used to do a lot of trade with China, China would secure contracts, say on soybeans, and those soybeans would be loaded onto giant ships and heading across the Pacific. And then you know what China would do? They would cancel the contracts while the soybeans are out in the middle of the ocean. And then China would come back and say, oh, well, we're going to cut a great deal for you, Iowa soybean farmer. We're going to renegotiate. We'll pick up those contracts again, but we're going to give you a lower price. And you know what? The Iowa soybean farmer has no choice but to accept a lower negotiated price with the Chinese. This is how the Chinese operate. So what the president doing is trying to reset the strategy with China. So most Iowa farmers are excited about the opportunity. Unfortunately, what we don't want to see is the loss of that huge market for our farmers. So if we don't trade with China, what we have to do is see the president and his U.S. trade rep, Jamieson Greer, open up new markets for the American farmer, or push for more domestic consumption of products coming from soybeans, from corn, from other agricultural products, from many of our other great agricultural states. So this is what we need to encourage. This is what we need to do. China has cheated us for a very long time. It's time to get it right.
The president's been obviously very bullish on China, but it's clear that he thinks he can get a deal and to get a deal soon. Obviously, the Chinese economy, the jury is out on how accurate those numbers are, and there are suggestions that they are actually suffering much more from the tariff wars than they're currently letting on. Do you think the president can get a deal? How soon do your constituents, your farmers, your state, how soon do you need that deal? And how long can you hold out playing essentially sort of tariff chicken at eye-watering levels of levies?
Yes, I would say the sooner the better on trade deals, like yesterday, would be great. Do I think the president can get these deals done? Yes, I do think he can get them done. The timing is critical. But one thing that we can focus on, especially within the agricultural community and for my farmers, is lowering the input costs. Right now, honestly, the price that we're getting for soybeans is it's maybe just a tiny little bit lower per bushel than the same period last year. So, we're seeing a continuance of the same low levels that we had of sales during the Biden administration. So we can't pin that on Trump with the tariffs. But what we have seen is an increase in input costs. Think about fertilizer. So we need to focus on those costs. If we can drive those costs down, then our farmers will be doing much better. So there's a number of ways to approach this.
Senator, the Chinese aren't going to want for nothing, are they? They're going to want some part in this deal. They're going to want America to turn a blind eye when they take Taiwan in their long-standing aggression towards Taiwan, and they consider it part of China. Are you confident that President Trump would stand by Taiwan if it came, if it came at a price of not getting a deal for your farmers?
I think what the president would do is make sure that deterrence is there, and we have seen a shift to the Indo-Pacific. And so, following on to what Colonel West was saying as well, is we've got to be able to make Taiwan completely unappetizing to the Chinese. So that means providing them with the ability to defend themselves by providing arms, training. We're all about that, making sure that they are that proverbial porcupine in the, to the Chinese. They don't want to take a bite because they're going to injure themselves. You rightly pointed out that the Chinese economy is suffering. We've got to push, arm where we can, deter how we can, and then hopefully we're not engaging American sailors, American Marines.
Do you think the president understands that?
We don't want to be in.
Do you think the president understands that? Because if we could look at how he's dealing with Ukraine, he is willing to give Ukraine, he's willing to give Putin land from Ukraine, and from where I'm sitting, that looks like a very clear invitation to the Chinese to essentially, well, to coin a better phrase, FAFO.
Well, I think it is very unfortunate, but I would say the president is a realist in this fight. We have seen several years of war in Ukraine under President Joe Biden, who was so reluctant to engage in arming the Ukrainians. He was so reluctant to even provide deterrence. He was pulling Americans and American fighting men that were training the Ukrainians out before the war even started. So President Trump is not doing that. President Trump has our American military working with the people of Taiwan.
Joe Biden did send long-range missiles. He did send tanks. He did send jets. Would you like to see President Trump up support for Ukraine?
Well,
I'm confused.
I am going to push back on that because President Biden only did it. Every time I went to President Biden and his national security advisor, Sullivan, it took 6 months of me pushing for them to even consider arming the Ukrainians. And it was with great reluctance. So many conversations I had in the skiff, pushing and pushing to no avail, only to have them concede months later that, oh, yes, we probably should have sent this at the beginning of the war. You know, this should have been shock and awe, and it was not. So the president is very real right now in the fact that it is very unlikely that we can gain some of that ground back from the Russians. And it hurts my heart to say that because I'm very closely connected to Ukraine and the people there. They are the breadbasket of Europe, much like Iowa provides so much food for our great United States. But unfortunately, this is the realistic situation on the ground. The Russians have an upper hand right now by having gotten that land. It's going to be very difficult to get them off of that land. I will do everything I can to encourage the president to do what we can for the Ukrainians. But again, he is very realistically situated right now in the fact that the Russians have gained the upper hand through many years of war in Ukraine. We don't want that to see that in Taiwan.
If that is the case, then it's a final question, and you strike a poignant thought there. If America was just going to pull the plug in the end and give this land to Putin on the current lines, essentially, give or take a few kilometers here and there, carve up the Donbass, carve up the east of Ukraine. Sorry, the east of Ukraine. There we go. What was the point of the last 3 years? That deal could have been done. That deal could have been done months and months and years ago without the loss of millions of lives on either side.
Yes, the Russians have not gained much in the last year, but you were absolutely correct. And President Trump, every time he engaged President Putin, Vladimir Putin, in those discussions, he thought he was gaining an opportunity for a peace agreement between Ukraine and Russia. And every single time Putin, he went ahead and would send missiles into Ukraine, which killed many more of those Ukrainian soldiers, many more in the civilian population. And I think that President Trump has really had a hard awakening to the fact that you cannot trust Vladimir Putin. And so he's getting to a point where we need to finish this. We need to settle it. We need to find an agreement, and then all hell will break loose. After some agreement is made, we arrange a ceasefire. If it continues to happen after that, then I know that there will be heck to reckon with coming from President Putin and from NATO. So I think at some point we need to see peace. I know that this comes at a very heavy cost, especially for our Ukrainian friends. Vladimir Putin, he is vile, he is despicable, he is evil. But at some point, we've got to lessen the wounds to Ukraine and make sure that they will survive for another day.
Senator, thank you for joining us tonight. If a slightly pressing note to end on there, but thank you for coming on Save the West. Come back and see us soon.
Thank you so much.
Sarah Selep, that is at the end of the day, I think we're going around in circles here tonight in the fact that you've got China, Donald Trump trying to deal with China. You've got Taiwan, China breathing down Taiwan's neck. You've got Donald Trump trying to solve the situation in Ukraine that is essentially, as the senator said, they're going to come at a cost of giving up land. Those two things basically inherently are a problem. If China see Donald Trump settle Ukraine by giving up land, they're not going to give the US a good trade deal without Taiwan.
No, I agree with that completely. And it was interesting to see what Senator Ernst said on that. I mean, I trust her on many, many issues, but she is the person to know trade, for agriculture, national security. She's been in the room where it happens, right? And it was very interesting of her to mention the breadbasket. Ukraine being the breadbasket of Europe in Iowa. I've never heard that, but that is very, very true. And I guess it does come back to, circling back to your original question in the last segment, but I don't know if Trump and Putin actually have this really close relationship or if it's the difference between a colleague and a friend. It's a work acquaintance. Would you actually go to them for something legitimate? I think it's a sense of respect. And I want the best for Ukraine. Everybody wants the best for Ukraine, but depleting our resources is never going to be the right answer.
Well, as Donald Trump said, America needs these tomahawks as well. Like we can't just give them away without replenishing the supplies. Obviously, the president's off to meet the Chinese. He's very bullish about the prospects of a deal. The senator there was very bullish about needing one. Do you think he's actually going to get one? I mean, the Chinese don't do these things quickly, do they?
No, they don't. But we've been expecting them to wage some sort of war on America and the rest of the world for some time, right? We're waiting for an AI war, technological
hacking. I mean, who knows took out Amazon this morning?
But we didn't expect a trade war to this extent. And the Ukrainian-Russian war, all eyes are on America. We've been talking about Gaza, Israel for so long, and it finally came to an end, right?
No, exactly. The attention span of the West seems to be able to focus on one thing at a time. But I think exactly, we've melted our brains. Sarah Selep, stay there. Don't go away. We'll be back after this with once again my favourite topic: free speech. Welcome back to Harry Cole Saves the West. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube. Type in Harry Cole Saves the West and hit that button, and you won't regret it. I am told. Now, severe case of Trump derangement syndrome to discuss. I've got a pair now of Republican strategists. Josh Jones has joined us in the studio. Sarah Selep is still with us. We were just trying to work out what you call a pair of Republican strategists in the break. But let's have a look at one of the world's greatest actors and greatest sufferers of TSD.
He's an alien. And he wants to hurt this country. It's something deeply psychological in him. He wants to hurt people. He wants to hurt this country. He doesn't care. And what saddens me the most, upsets me the most, is that people follow him and they think and they kiss his ass and they look up to him. And I don't understand it. I don't understand the people in his cabinet, some of them, Rubio, other one, how they can live with themselves.
Donald Trump is an alien. Josh Jones, he's been called a king, a tyrant, and now an alien. These people are just cracked, haven't they?
Yeah, I mean, they don't get it. If you go back to 2016, they did the exact same thing, and flash forward to 2025, and guess what? He's the president again.
Yeah.
So on the Democratic side of the aisle, both in your elected leaders and then also in celebrities as well, I mean, they're just totally out of touch with their messaging, and I don't think it's resonating. I mean, to call the president an alien and to go after his inner circle like that is totally disconnected from what the American people are.
I mean, look, Kamala Harris tried all this last year. She spent all those millions of pounds from Beyonce gigs and Bruce Springsteen and getting celebrities and lobbyists in it. You're an up-and-coming young man who looks at this, who's grown up in the Trump era, essentially. When you see elderly Hollywood lobbyists like that, what does it make you feel as a member of your generation?
I mean, look, and I think you're seeing this from Gen Z across the board right now, and kind of its return to conservatism, or at least leaning in that direction, you're totally right. I've grown up in the social media era when everything's been online and with the internet, and the Hollywood elite are totally just out of touch with the average everyday American. And you saw this in the 2024 election of Kamala Harris bringing in all these celebrities, trying to win over young people.
And the numbers went the other way, right?
Yeah.
Sarah, you say, I mean, you strategize, you poll, I mean, does this stuff help them or help? Or is it net positive, or is it?
I just like the line that Kamala and the Democrats did not pay the celebrities. They just ended up being there.
Sorry, of course. They just mysteriously happened.
Beyonce did not perform. But that's the funny thing. If you read Kamala's book, you see all of this.
You read it for me, I think. I read the extract.
Did you read my tweet thread? Yeah. I got 72 pages in and I was like, dear God, please make this stop. But that's the funny thing. Like, of all people, Robert De Niro, like, sir, go else somewhere. Like, we respect Trump. We are not terrible people. I'm just so sick of them saying that we're not good enough.
51.7% of American voters, disagree with that he is in. There's a slight darker side to it as well. I want to look at something else that Robert De Niro said.
He will not. We see it. We see it all the time. He will not want to leave. He set it up with his. I guess he's the Goebbels of the cabinet. Stephen Miller, he's a Nazi. Yes, he is, and he's Jewish, and he should be ashamed of himself.
So, lovable, lovey, sort of crazy granddad's gone a bit crazy about Trump. But at the end of the day, there's a horrible smear there. And a really nasty streak, Sarah Salep, about, Stephen Miller. Yes, he's a hardline, MAGA guy. He is leading an aggressive clampdown on immigration and lots of other matters. But calling a Jewish guy Goebbels and calling him a Nazi without a flinch on mainstream television.
Right.
That's the kind of dark place the left has got to, right?
Exactly. Well, this is exactly what we've been seeing since 2015. But first off, Robert De Niro is 80-something years old. He needs media training because I couldn't understand a word that he was saying except for Nazi. And that's how it keeps going. They need a filler word. It's Nazi, fascist, you're not woke, you like kings, tyrant, all of that stuff. I am so sick of hearing these buzzwords that they're throwing around. Like, remember when Nazi actually meant something?
Yeah, and the word racist meant something.
No, exactly.
And Josh, you're surprised. Then you read stories like the FBI discovering at Palm Beach a potential shooting spot. We had 2 attempts on the president's life last year. We had people at the No Kings rally, shooting themselves in the neck. But recreating the assassination of Charlie Kirk as a political left-wing statement. Do people like Robert De Niro have responsibility for the sort of mood of the nation?
Yeah, absolutely. This is how people get killed. Going back to Charlie Kirk, you've had multiple assassination attempts on the president himself. I mean, this is the kind of rhetoric that will get people killed. And like you just said, Nazi used to mean something. The Nazis were in the 1940s, and that's why America and Britain and the Allies fought against. That's not what's happening here, and this kind of rhetoric encourages political violence from the left, and that's why you've seen, like you saw in West Palm with that tree stand or that hunting stand. I mean, the threats against the rhetoric coming out of the left is encouraging these threats against people's lives, and they need to be held.
They say that Donald Trump calling them all Antifa and left-wing terrorists and domestic terrorists and vile scumbags and all the rest, is kind of par for the course, right?
Right. It's unfortunate. I mean, that's where we're at in our political landscape, and I think young people are kind of seeing through that. Going back to growing up in the digital era, they're not buying it, they're not subscribing to this rhetoric, and I think you'll see that play out over the next couple of years as we get to the midterms and then eventually 2028.
Talking of rhetoric and conversation, a fascinating story that's broken in. We've been covering it at length on the show. In fact, Graham Linehan, the comedian at the very centre of this storm, came on the show not long ago. Now, he was arrested at Heathrow Airport for a tweet that he sent. He lives in Arizona, for starters. He tweeted something on X, did you say X? He X'd something, which was, a US company hosted on US servers, a joke, a pretty crap joke, but a joke nonetheless, about transgender bathrooms. Basically said, how do you get a woman out of a transgender bathroom, kick him in the balls? That was the joke. Now, the Metropolitan Police used terror cops to arrest him. He's just been cleared tonight. He's been facing no further action. Not least, I think, from pressure from the sort of global condemnation of their outrage. The Metropolitan Police, who run Police London, have said they will no longer be investigating these sort of non-crime hate incidents, as they call them. Sarah, do you think pressure from people like J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio, Donald Trump himself has, helped sort of Britain slightly see the light on this?
Absolutely. I mean, we can all agree that America is the freest country on earth. That's why millions of people try to come.
Though. I mean, Pam Bondi, after Charlie Kirk, did come out and say that you could potentially see legal policing of language.
That's the frustrating part, where we are so free. Our speech is so free since Elon took over that we've been seeing terrible things online. And I don't necessarily blame Elon on that. I just think it's how we're desensitized to it at this point. It's like watching a movie. Our friend got murdered, and people are still
celebrating
making that joke. Exactly. But I mean, it's the same people who will go on and every single day say we need to do this to every single other people or every other single Republican. Like, and it translates into what they were carrying, what they were wearing on Saturday. It was disgusting. So we are so free, our speech is so free, that of course it's going to trickle down to other countries.
All right, we've had a very heavy show tonight, so a little bit of light relief. I mean, he may not be a king, but he's a king of the zinger. Let's see what Donald Trump said to the poor, unsuspecting Australian ambassador today.
Even things the ambassador said about you in the past, the Australian ambassador?
I don't know anything about him. I mean, if he said bad, then maybe he'll like to apologize. I really don't know. Did an ambassador say something bad about him? Don't tell me. I don't. Where is he? Is he still working for you?
Yeah.
You said bad?
Before I took this position, Mr. President.
I don't like you either. I don't, and I probably never will. Go ahead.
Josh Jones, I don't think he was joking there.
I think you're totally right. I mean, one of President Trump's biggest assets that he has is his humor. I mean, he's a real human being.
He's a TV guy, right? He's got the comic timing.
Right, yeah. He's a very funny guy. And again, it goes back to him coming from his background, but also just being a real person. I feel like so often in politics, people get so disconnected, and I don't think that's him.
Final thought, 20 seconds. I mean, that is not your normal diplomacy in action there. You can see that Kevin Rudd, former Prime Minister of Australia, wince as he was sort of given the box office treatment there.
What you see is what you get. I mean, there's a reason he's good at making deals. He's a normal person with actual character traits that people want around them. Of course, you'd want that sense of humor. I want him as a friend.
You couldn't write it. He is box office. Republican strategist Josh Jones, Sarah Stenop, thank you for joining us on Save the West tonight. That's all we've got time for tonight. A bit of a depressing show there for the people of Ukraine, but let's see what the week brings. Don't go anywhere.